microlearning mastery, right? In today's world, you all know that the fast-paced world, how microlearning is most important and how is it a game changer for all of us, right? It's a bite-sized learning which helps everyone to learn in a quick access, and how as a HR or a learning fraternity we can ensure is like, one is like how do we bring the employee engagement, employee retention, productivity, and most importantly it ensures the ROI that which we all are talking from morning, right? I mean, investing less, and then how do you make sure that we get the output about this using the micro learning. And also one important thing that as I said, it is in a fast-paced work environment. So the attention span, which was in 2004, it was based on some report we have got to know that it is around 2.5 minutes. But now, any guesses? I may ask the audience. Any guesses that what is the attention span we have today? Because we all having a conversation that we were debating on the seconds. So any guesses on that? Okay. Again, we may have to have the debate then. Yeah, it's drastically dropped, compared to the previous. Like the attention span is very less. Now the young generation has been always used to scroll the Instagram. So same thing they have started doing in the learning also. So how efficiently we can use the micro learning, and a lot of things coming from the panels. So we'll quickly start on and hear from them. So this question goes to Biju. How does microlearning impact long-term retention and practical application of knowledge amongst employees?
Actually don't know. I'm really worried because you mentioned 8 seconds is the attention span.
Yes.
And if that is right after lunch, what will that be? Probably less than half of that. So I'll try and cover that in 4 seconds. It's a very interesting question because after a heavy loaded analytics session and before that the technology session, microlearning seems to be a very interesting but not really heavy subject. So that's the right thing after lunch.
No, you should say it is heavy, then only they'll be awake.
So I will talk about my story. I started my career probably 28 years ago, and my first job was in aviation. And the first thing I did was to get a certification called IATA. I don't even know how many of you know there's a certification called IATA. So I did IATA certification. Those days, it was only in the Air India building that you have to go to, sit in a 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I don't remember exactly, 4 weeks, 6 weeks class. For that, you can get an 80% marks in the certification, which is supposed to be guided by the Geneva, right? So I entered the classroom first and I saw probably a 1 feet tall book, or it's actually 2 books because one book it is heavy to turn. So 2 books, and the only thing I still remember, what the hell? I mean, I'm not going to learn this in 4 weeks time to get 80% mark. Now the thing that then I thought about this yesterday when I was thinking about the subject is that at that point of time, what I was thinking was about certification, not learning. I don't think anything that I learned was retained for a day. Forget about 30 days. Those days we used to say that the retention for what you learn is 30 days. Today, it has come down to probably seconds or minutes, right? So I think it is more forced by technology that we are here today, not really that micro learning is a long-term solution. It's just a solution to the problem that we have, because I think that time when I did the IATA course, I could still remember about 100 telephone numbers, right? The only telephone number that I remember today is my wife's number because she forces me to remember. Otherwise, I would have forgot that too, right? There's nothing that I remember, not that our brains have shrunk, it's just that we don't use it the way we used to use it those days. So today, microlearning is definitely essential. I mean, evil I may call it, is because otherwise there is nothing that we can do, right? So I think the first benefit that is in the current scenario that we have it enhances the retention. Because, I mean, microlearning, what I understand is a content that can be given in 3 to 5 minutes or not more than 7 minutes is what the definition says. But anything less than 10 minutes would be a microlearning. But that can be engaging in terms of video. There's no definition of that. Should it be a video? Should it be, content in a Word format? Or it could be just cheat sheets. Anything that you can retain for a longer thing and you can recall. I think anything that happens in a short span, I'm sure you will remember the wife joke more than the whole 1 hour content, because the smaller impactful content you will always remember. So that's the first benefit benefit that I talk about. And it's also flexible. I mean, I'm one of the luckiest because it took me only 30 minutes from home to this venue. Some days we spend hours together. So, and imagine that you have, I mean, you said, many people say learning is waste of time. But there's nothing more waste than driving in Bangalore traffic for 2 hours. Imagine that you can spend 15 minutes or 5 or 6 different topics. You can learn 5 or 6 different topics in that half an hour to 1 hour drive that we have on a daily basis. So that is the flexibility that we have. And I'm making it into smaller chunks that you can probably understand. And so that is the biggest benefit I see. And the third thing is, I think from a business point of view, most important thing is, yes, it is cost effective. I mean, my previous role, I used to do content development. 3 years ago, I started that group. My group took 8 months to develop a 3-day content, and the same group developed the similar certification program in probably less than 3 weeks' time. Right? So technology is also helping, and so that is the way the world is moving towards. So this is much more cost effective in that, and from a speed, right? I said from a 6 months to 3 weeks. Imagine that I'm developing a product today and I have to train my people in 6 months later. It's too late, right? So I think speed is the biggest benefit today. So all these, I mean, there are many more benefits, but I think for want of time, I will put that into 3 benefits that I say, retention, flexibility, and speed. That's what I call it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, micro-learning is very important. It's a bite-sized learning which we constantly do. Here the challenge is for all of us, how do you design the micro-learning, right? Micro-learning, we can't have a large content put in there and people doesn't read it. So how do you make an eye-catcher to them? How do they recognize? That's more important. So connecting to that, I would like to ask Roydon about what are some best practices for designing micro-learning modules that are both engaging and aligned with the specific needs for the global organization like Northern Trust.
Yeah, thanks, Gracie. But before I answer the question around designing for micro-learning, I think I'd like to just bust a couple of myths about micro-learning. And while I do agree that attention spans are falling, and it's falling, by the day, I think using that line of thought in learning may not be that relevant. And I'll tell you why. See, when you look at the attention spans dropping and, the whole analogy around it and the reasons as to why that's happening, it's probably relevant in the marketing advertising industry, right? Because there you're actually battling for somebody's attention to sell a product or to market a particular product. Learning is a little more serious than that, right? So micro-learning, just by having shorter modules and trying to make it a little more creative and a little more engaging, is not going to address your eventual impact of that learning, which could be organizational change, behavior change. It could be something to do with functional learning as well, right? It's a lot more critical, a lot more important than that. The second myth I'd like to bust is micro-learning is all about making a 1 hour module into a 5-minute module. Right? Again, the essence is going to be lost. And I'll share a short story. I know it's after lunchtime. Most of you are probably feeling asleep. Maybe I'll help you in that process. Okay, so I happened to meet a good friend of mine a few months back. And he came to me and he said, we've shortened this learning development program, which was like 8 hours of learning, 1 hour modules, into 5-minute modules. I was like, great, tell me more about it. And he showed it to me. I had a look at it. it was fabulous. The 5-minute modules were fabulous. But then the question that I had was, you've reduced an entire leadership development program of 8 hours into a 40-minute micro learning journey. Has it really had the impact that you intended to have, right? So I looked at the module, objectives were mentioned, outcomes were mentioned. So I said, okay, this is a good trailer, where's the movie? Right, the movie was missing, right? And so I said, okay, so do you think that you met your objective? And the response the gentleman gave me was, yes, when we had those 8 hours of learning, nobody would come and attend the completion rates were very low. But the moment we reduced it to a 5-minute module, the completion rates are high, right? So I explained it to this person this way. I said, there are either two ways that this could have gone wrong, right? One is, it's like a 1,200 square feet apartment, right? And you're now saying that you've condensed the 1,200 square feet apartment into a 100 square feet apartment, right? So either your design initially itself was wrong, and imagine the price that you're paying for that apartment is the effort of your team. So if you've been doing that all along, what was actually required was a 100 square feet apartment, and you've been selling a 1,200 square feet apartment to your audience, right? They've been paying a lot more than what is actually required, right? So in which case, your initial design was wrong. So microlearning is not solving the problem that you initially had. Or the other alternative explanation for this is they need a 1,200 square feet apartment, and you're forcing them to buy a 100 square feet apartment, which again is not going to serve the purpose, right? So microlearning is not about making that 1,200 square feet apartment concise. It's about delivering 100 square feet at a time, right? So it's not about making that 60 minutes 5 minutes. It's about delivering 5 minutes at a time until you reach that 60 minutes. Now coming to the design part, sorry, it took a long time to come to the actual question. Now in terms of designing for microlearning, I don't think it's any different from designing for a regular e-learning or another module. I would recommend going in with a usual audience analysis. You do your Bloom's taxonomy, define your objectives based on your Bloom's taxonomy. And then for regular 1-hour modules, typically most people would go with Gagne's 9 events, right? It's like a well-established model. When you're doing a micro-learning module, I would recommend something called as the ARCS model. It's a lot more concise. It's attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. And it's easier to implement when you're designing for a 5-minute or a 10-minute module.
Thank you. That's helpful. Actually, all contents also cannot be kind of a micro-learning. We need to understand what can be go on micro-learning and what is in-person training and what is like self-paced learning, right? We have to segregate that. Coming to the next question, maybe Srijit can answer this. With employees often overwhelmed by tight schedules, how can organization integrate micro-learning seamlessly into their learning journey?
I think Roydon beautifully told us, see, microlearning is not about giving what people don't want, but giving it in smaller chunks, thereby giving them the complete value. Could you just repeat the question so I just pick up? I want to emphasize on this point and bring
With
to that.
With employees often overwhelmed by tight schedules, how can organization integrate microlearning?
Overwhelmed with work is something that is a reality of today, not because they're overwhelmed, but I think, at least in my organization, we have a particular number of people who are allocated for certain projects, and they have a very tight deadline. The other day we were talking about this, that somebody goes on a vacation, yeah, we are on PTO, but when we come back, the work still remains. It's up to an individual whether they want to complete before they go or come back and complete it, unlike a government sector where, okay, I'm on leave, I don't have to manufacture these things, whatever, on those lines. So the relevance of this is so much today, because people want to learn because they understand they have a gap. The manager understands, the individuals understand, and we, I think, as HR team or L&OD team, continuously keep passing this message that unless you upskill, upgrade, things are just going to go away, and then tomorrow you will become irrelevant. And I think during the last few months and years, we've seen that those who do not learn, they definitely are not around for multiple reasons, especially when there are right sizing and things like that happen. So the challenge is in ensuring that you support your people with what they want, but in the way that they can learn at their convenience. Like he was talking about, Biju was saying, right, that when you're driving, is there something that instead of sitting and cursing your traffic, can I make it as my learning time? And that's a beautiful strategy that I've heard and been following, and I'm sure that's why he's also saying. It could take an individual an hour, but if that 1 hour is invested in learning, that's fine. So convenience is very important. That's why what we've done is we have bites, we have emails that we send as just small bites, and it will not be done with one. We may be addressing a particular topic that we felt is an issue for a team. So we work with the stakeholder and we understand this is what we need to address over a period of time. It could be every alternate day, sometimes every single day, emails that goes out to these people, which is just less than a second. They glance and with powerful pictures that we have, which helps people to retain. That's why I told him, his example was so beautiful. People know, 1,200 square feet house is what I needed. I'm not getting 100 alone, but then over a period of time, I'm getting what I pay for or what I want. Similarly there, multiple chunks or number of emails that goes out to individuals on this topic. It could also be short sessions, which could be maybe 8 to 10 minutes as video bites. Sometimes we also have an app called as Employee Connect app. We very beautifully, that app is used by our organization 24/7.ai for all the services that an individual has to avail from the company. So learning is also inbuilt into this particular app. So when they log in here, they're also forced to just have one quick glance on this. So multiple ways. So that way people never feel that learning is a burden, but they enjoy the journey, they enjoy the process because they're getting exactly what we want. We generally don't have this carpet bombing thing that, okay, everybody has to get this. Some may not need it. And if there is somebody who needs, they will anyways come back to us. So different strategies depending on needs and how conveniently we can offer and how creative one can be is what sells well. And then, of course, the impact of it, which I'll come back later whenever I see there is something that we can pick up on that line.
So adding to that, in our company, we are also created a WhatsApp group, which is more convenient. People always, have the mobile learning, kind of a tech, environment which we are in now. So WhatsApp groups we created and then start pushing them. So easily it get captured. Our goal is for them to make learn. Yeah. So the next question goes to Pankaj. What are some challenges specific to implementing micro-learning in highly regulated industries like insurance? How can they be overcome?
Let me start with the topic that we discussed at the beginning, attention span, because everyone is silent. So the attention span is shrinking, we all agree.
Yes.
It is being compared with goldfish now. They say that goldfish attention span is 9 seconds and we are at 8.25. So there is a race going on, how we reduce the attention span. But there is, why all this started? Let us look at that rather than, saying whether this is good or not good. It has a history. Long back in a book, Economics of Human Resources, the writer mentioned, first time the word was coined micro-learning. From there, behavioral psychologists started, researching on that, discussing that, studying that. And they found out that the cognitive load theory, which means that at any one point of time, how much information can a person receive and can retain. On that basis, the micro-learning theory started gaining importance. Today, when we talk of the shrinking attention span and the importance of micro-learning, we try to relate that. It is because we are talking of adults who are internet users. So when they are using internet, their attention spans are those limited ones. So now we are racing towards, gaining that attention span of an adult who is, using internet, making the learning available on phone, where already the person is doing so many other transactions. So one is that we have to look at whether the attention span is our enemy, and we have to, contain that. Second is that, from my perspective, and as you mentioned that in a strictly regulated industry like insurance, how do we deal with it? Our body of knowledge in general insurance is huge. It's tremendous. No one can comprehend people who spend years together and retire from the industry. They cannot even, confidently say that they have gained all the knowledge in the industry. And I'm not saying that other industries, they can do that. But here it is definitely not that. So, in a very strictly regulated industry, if you are trying to ensure that what is the purpose of sharing knowledge and enhancing the knowledge, that you want to take the performance of your of the receiver or the learner from point A to point B, okay, and ensure that the knowledge is applied where it is to be applied, and the outcome has to be optimum. So whether you use micro-learning or you use any other method, depending on the circumstances and the era that you are dealing in, it definitely says that micro-learning is going to stay here. Okay. Now when we come to the subject matter, we have to do, I am in this industry for the last 20 years. And when I started, my seniors who initially said, "Yeah, you are not from the domain, so how will you survive, how will you swim in this ocean of general insurance? It's not your cup of tea," literally. So I was given a place to sit there, given 1 month, and I was told that if you come out with good training manual, you are in, otherwise you look forward to some other industry. So first few days I was really, it was terrifying for me to learn all that. But then when I started speaking to the seniors, they said that we have spent 6 months as an induction program, in an induction program. You have not even spent 1 day in the induction. And today we have inductions of half-day programs. Yeah? So 6 months of induction in public sector, and they used to stay there. It was a residential program. I think Biju mentioned about that. 6 months of induction program, you come out with marvelous professionals who understands the theory like back of their hand. And then they apply it into the industry. That liberty is gone. That leisure has gone. Now you are pressed for time. Now you have to comprehend all that knowledge into small nuggets and deliver it and expect the same results or maybe better results. Where are we leading to? So the challenge was that, and to comprehend that challenge, we said that we will experiment with micro-learning, but it will not be the only thing that we'll do. It will complement all other types of learning, because the ultimate aim is that person has to be productive. Okay.
Right.
So general insurance, typically the industry I belong to, has a mandate from the Ministry of Finance through IRDA. The regulator is very clear about certain regulations. Now, of course, you see 70 regulations reduced to some 12, 13 regulations. That there also the micro thing is happening. And so even the industry as a whole, the compliance, we do a lot of compliance training. And those are not simple, terms that people can remember.
And it's mandatory now.
It is mandatory, AML and POSH and data privacy and everything. So when you are dealing with governance, there you have to understand that you have to do justice to the subject matter also, so that you don't falter on the regulations. At the same time, you have to ensure that everyone understands it. It's not a small deal. It is a big. So what we do, we spend a lot of time churning that information, make meaning out of it, decipher what is important for people to understand, and then put it as a supplement to the main course. So micro-learning is also augmenting all other learning methods. For example, we do have physical workshops, then we have full day-long workshops through online medium, but we also have micro-learning, and that helps people to remember it frequently, retain the information, and start applying it. Another aspect that I would like to bring in, because I think that's the only question I'll be handling, on the industry part, then it will be general. So now that the industry has been given a mandate by the government and the IRDA that by 2047, we have to have insurance for all. So that's a larger target. Every company, this is the first time any regulator is giving sales targets to insurance companies. So insurance companies have been given sales targets, although they are in spirit, not in letter right now. But, so we have to look at that also by 2047, every Indian citizen should have insurance. Now what does that mean? That means that we are looking at some 10-15% people in the organized sector. Look at the population of India, reaching there through distribution channel. Now there is Bima Trinity, which means Bima Sugam, Bima, that's an e-commerce platform. Then you have Bima Vistar, a product which will be understood by a common man. And all the insurances will be covered, life, general, and property. And then you also have Bima Vahak. My biggest challenge today, if you ask me, how do I look at micro-learning helping me growing my business in future? When the Bima Vahak channel, distribution channel opens up, which means that rural women will be participating as distributors of insurance. So we're not talking of organized sector, where people are educated, highly educated. If you give them flashcards, they will read and understand quickly what it means. We are talking to populations where the awareness levels are very, very limited. Their basic education is also limited. And through them, we have to ensure that quality business happens. No mis-selling happens. Because recently, IRDA also came up saying that, mis-selling is happening through different channels. They named a particular channel also. If we have to train them and ensure that mis-selling doesn't happen, that's a bigger challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
And micro-learning, I think, will really help, but there are challenges, which we'll talk later. Okay. But that is how, in this industry, we look at micro-learning.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, and it's going to be a hard journey. I mean, as you said, right, 2027. The next question for Sanjyoti, for you: how can micro-learning be adapted to cater to the diverse workforce needs in large organizations like your industry?
So I'll be talking about my specific industry, but before I start talking about manufacturing and how micro-learning factors into a manufacturing setup, let me just start with a learner's perspective. So let me take myself and what I expect out of micro-learning. So having said that, we have to take into account that the workforce can be very, very dynamic, very, very diverse. We'll come to that later on how micro-learning caters to that. But from a learner point of view, what benefit I want from micro-learning would be to maybe quickly recall or quickly refresh my learnings about very, very important topics having a direct impact on my job or my industry. So that is my number one priority if I'm thinking about micro-learning. Second priority would be to have something creative to learn. So some training modules are boring, some training modules are very, very lengthy, some training modules just don't make sense for my job. So this is second benefit that I would want to derive from micro-learning from a learner's perspective would be, it should be creative, it should be engaging, it should be something that sparks that dopamine in the mind, which is direct correlation to how social media works, right? So that is something from a learner's perspective. Coming to a business perspective, as HR professionals or as somebody who drives key business drivers such as productivity, efficiency, what does business expect out of micro-learning? So one might ask, I mean, our leaders ask, or people who've not been exposed to micro-learning, at least in manufacturing setup, might want to ask, why invest in micro-learning? We have set up processes to deliver a day-long learning. Let's just go with that. It's all set up. You don't even have to invest time to maybe research about something else. Why to invest in micro-learning? I think from a business point of view and specifically manufacturing point of view, safety, for example, safety is of paramount importance in manufacturing. How do we ensure that everybody is getting refreshed with the safety training? Yes, we can call everybody once in a while, have a 2-day-long training, but with time, how effective would that be? So people are missing the trainings, people are not listening. I don't know, we talked about attention span, that's an established fact. At least that is something we know. So how do we ensure that safety is ingrained in every individual who's working for us at our manufacturing setup? So that becomes a very, very important cause for the business leadership to invest in micro-learning. So refreshing content in our mind. So coming back to, the baseline for micro learning, in my perspective and from a manufacturing point of view, we are not talking about replacing macro learning. That's not, I feel that's not what the point should be driven at. We are just talking about, for example, in manufacturing, it is very, very important for us to train our workforce on SOPs, on operating procedures of our equipments, on productions line, on safety hazards. The first point of information cannot be micro-learning for them. I mean, that would just mean that they have just a very limited understanding of something very, very important to their life, to the life of the business, right? So in no ways, as a business, we are saying that we'll replace macro learning. So we are not replacing maybe the traditional methods, maybe very, very deep dive kind of sessions on training material. But what we are saying is we are augmenting it with micro learning. So we want to enhance the retention. So going back deeper into the subject matter and talking a little bit of psychology, because I come from a psychology background. The whole intent is to push knowledge that we have in our short-term memory to long-term memory. So it typically takes around 6 months of time to continuously review and recall for that memory to get pushed into long-term memory. So it's not enough. It's not enough if you have a 1 day long training session every month. Still, it might not be enough. You need to maybe apply it. You need to keep on refreshing it, at least for a prolongated period of time, so that it gets pushed into your long-term memory. Once it gets pushed into your long-term memory, that is when you can recall that information. So recall in terms of times of need, in terms of business productivity, is something that we are aiming at from a micro-learning perspective. So coming back to, how do we, review or refresh that training time and again, you got to make it engaging. So, how to drive that point home, why micro-learning is important for a manufacturing setup also. We are having dual, I think, quadruple benefits out of it. You are making sure that your training material is getting refreshed in the minds of your employees. You are pushing that engagement score high. And manufacturing setups are typically very high on the job training. So you definitely don't, you expect people to apply the trainings on the job right away, and the operations are running 24/7. So you are letting them have that option of just-in-time learning also. So if you want to quickly refer a SOP or quickly see how this particular machine should work, what are the hazards if I'm standing near it, where is that information available quickly? Can I access it somewhere? Can I access it in my mobile? And talking about not only mobile or not only technology, I can access it right in front of my department, wall also. So in our company at least, we have had safety rules, a couple of safety rules, drafted on top of the wall itself, so that anyone can pass by looking at it. I feel that is what micro-learning is, at least for how I have seen it play out in manufacturing. It's a refresh recall mechanism, and we've been very surprised on how meticulously it works. In day-to-day interactions, I've come across people, completely, totally aware about POSH regulations, laws and regulations. Now, why that has happened, we have time and again driven that communication. As my co-panelist said, emails, infographics, somewhere written on the wall that this is right, this is wrong, this type of touch is right or wrong. I think that has helped our workforce ingrain that very, very deeply, and that is the role micro-learning plays. And I don't think it's just limited to manufacturing setup. I'm just giving example from but I think that's the same for everybody, all the industries sitting here. So I think that is typically what happens in manufacturing and how it plays out for us. But at a broader level, that is the importance of micro-learning, and that is how we should be driving that point forward in terms of business output.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the learning is like, it's a focused bite-sized learning, right? How do we leverage it is more important. And also I like the term of long-term memory, right? How do you make them constantly sending this micro-learning to them and make them registered in their brains? That's more important. So this question goes to Biju. Can you share an example of micro-learning initiatives in Dell technologies that significantly enhance the employee performance? And what are the takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, there are many. There are obviously all of us over here working with organizations have many examples. She actually touched on beautiful example of how she uses micro-learning in the manufacturing setup. I think all of us do it, but I think I like to talk about this example because we marketed it well. I come from, before the learning development role, I am from a tech support world in Dell. I've had 10 years experience in Dell, and those who are from the tech support world understand that agent retention in terms of knowledge retention is the biggest challenge, and that's one detractor, and there's a lot of focus on resolution, customer satisfaction, and these are and cost. These are three things that drives the tech support world or a contact center world. The biggest challenge being there is that you have a lot of known issues, but the solution is dependent entirely on how that agent gives that resolution to the customer. And that resolution is also based a lot on how he probes, because these are not 3 minutes interaction. These are all 30 minutes to an hour interaction with the customer to identify what's the actual real issue is the customer is facing. And the same solution, we found that different agent gives different solution, and obviously sometimes it ends up with a customer dissatisfaction or a solution, wrong dispatch, and the failures can go long. Right. And this was, while we talk about micro-learning today, this example that I've started when I was probably 12 years back in tech support world, we marketed it. Everything that we do, we need to sell it with some marketing name, otherwise nothing sells. So we called it a 3Q5M. That is 3 questions in 5 minutes. And the first thing that agent does when he logs in, not the first thing, within the first hour, every tech support agent and the level 2s had to take this 3 questions, every day different questions, and and that question laps in 5 minutes. So 3 questions, 5 minutes. And those questions were all based on the known issues of the previous day, previous weeks, and sometimes it's also based on the number of failures that we've had. Now, one, because it is very simple questions, nobody will copy others. And 2, it is all random questions, so it's not, your question is not the same as mine. So, and it's also probably relevant to the failures of that particular individual. So it's also kind of connected to what he is doing. So one, that from a learning point of view, we identified what is the need for that particular individual. And then there are these 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes videos or sometimes activities to correct that individual if he makes a mistake. If there's no mistake, I mean, he's getting 100 out of 100 every day, it's fine. So that's one example that I can talk about, that we've really helped the agent. ROI, you spoke about ROI. We've had about 5% improvement in our solution after that, because that is the benefit of that. And now that 12 years plus, that process is still on. So you don't have something in micro-learning that's still continuing for the last 12 to 13 years.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea, right? 3 questions in 5 minutes, what comes on your mind, and then how do you answer it within 5 minutes, and different person has different perspective to answer. Yeah. What tactics have proven effective in gaining stakeholder buy-in for adapting micro-learning approaches at scale? Srijit, maybe you can take this.
I won't call it tactic though. That's a very tricky word. Everybody wants to learn, and I think at the beginning or sometimes we discuss a pretty similar question about, it's not about an individual because of his work, etc., that they're not able to prioritize, right? That's a fact too. I think in the previous panel they were talking about this, that somebody said, why? Whenever a business leader tells you, I want you to do this for me, so ask a why. And they have a why in many cases. Sometimes because this is the most happening thing, and I heard that company, this friend did this, so I want something similar in our office too. I thought it was fantastic, etc. But if you ask for a why, they have a reason. And wherever there is a reason, that's their real challenge. So I feel the best way for us to work with our stakeholders is for us to understand what is their why. Now, how do I understand? Not just by going with what they tell me, but I would like to get a feel of it, because that's when I feel most of these things are designed by me personally. So I would like to understand who is going through it, to what extent. So when there are war room meetings that are happening, which is quite common in the product industry that we belong to, I'm part of those meetings to see what's the kind of frustration levels that people are expressing, and the challenges and the fights, and how much they race against time to solve certain challenges or something that has gone wrong. So behavior everywhere, right? Similarly, when you go and become part of the strategy, roadmap, etc., then you know what is somebody focused on. So mine is not based on just understanding about from the person who reaches out to me and say this is what I want, but working with them and solving it for them. Is it easy and is it possible all the time? Need not be. There are many a times there are people who are quite senior to me who say, I don't know, I've heard too much of wah-wah about this, and I want you to want this to be done. ठीक है, ले जाओ. Oh, it worked for that manager. I want it for my team too. Okay, that's fine. But then more than the tactic, it is about being with them and helping them understand and solve for what they want. Similarly, the other way around also, from the bottom of the spectrum too, you have learners who are looking for certain things. There are many that I speak to who over a period of time wants to grow in their careers. So if you're not doing what they want and what they're passionate about for learning, then they're not interested too. So the tactic that has worked for me is to understanding what they want and giving it to them in that format. And I think he was also very beautifully saying that it's not about cutting down something that usually I do it for 16 hours into just 2-hour module and say, okay, done, tick in the in my checkbox, and I've touched this many number of hours is done, this many number of people have gone through, feedback score of 4.9, this is the change that we see, ROI, blah, blah. They're all very important, not undermining them. But to ensure you give what people want, that they like to learn in the format that they want to learn. Now, micro-learning, if you don't follow it up, I think she was also mentioning about that, with few other intervention, it may not work. So what I have done is, while I send out these communications through e-learning or through the Employee Connect app, etc., I have identified learning partners from every team. There are people who are always, wherever you see the I types, if you understand DISC as a personality assessment type, there are these I guys who really want to socialize, stand there, talk. They're not trainers, but they wish somewhere that they could have actually hog the limelight and be like a trainer, etc. So identify those people. I like that smile. Identify those people, and then during the team huddles, so whatever I've sent as bites, we bring that up as a discussion for maybe 5 minutes. While my bites were only for few seconds that they had looked at, when the series is over or during the middle of the series, we do a team huddle, which is their team huddle, and I'm just walking in, but I have an understanding with my learning partner who will then say, I'm going to take the next 5 minutes to talk about this particular series that the L&OD team ran. And then I see the engagement to how much people have read it or not read it, and if they have, how differently they are seeing. So when it catches up at one place, this easily gets on to everywhere else too, and then I suddenly see that excitement and passion that people exhibit for what they've been learning, and how they can also then contribute to that learning initiative. I have played my part too, and that's brilliant. Over a period of time, to take them for lunch, my CEO very kindly agrees to be around, or my CPO when he's in town, and then reward those people too. So doing multiple things, circus, jugaad, whatever you call them, tactic.
Yeah.
All of these works. Thanks.
Most of gamification is what is being trending now, right? We have to design a gamification for every learning now to get the stakeholder for that. Okay, how do you see emerging technologies like AI and AR and VR? Maybe Pankaj can take this question.
The emerging technologies, particularly AR, VR and AI, we are talking a lot about it. In fact, the industry has also started working around those technologies. Particularly in our industry, where we sell intangibles, insurance is an intangible thing. You can't show a customer a mobile phone. You can show that customer a mobile phone, but not an insurance concept. So you have to imagine things. So not only for the customers while reaching out to them, and our sales teams when they are in interface with the customer, their AR and VR would be very, very applicable. We experimented it. We said that imagine in your home, what are the different risks that you are carrying? So not every time you can actually, make customers imagine. But through AR, VR, you can actually show them on a screen what can go wrong with your home. And home is the most, it carries a lot of sentimental value to that. So by that, you can, ensure that even for the Salesforce training, for example, if you are explaining them marine concepts, not every time it is possible to go to the dock and actually show them a container ship and explain them how it works and what could go wrong with that. But through these technologies, we can definitely, bring in those aspects which are far-fetched, which are not understood by reading text. So people can't visualize unless they see videos or see, things happening in front of them actually. That is one. Secondly, we see a lot of use of artificial intelligence, particularly when we are underwriting the risks. There, again, we feel that this data is always scanty. When you are trying to figure out trends, let's say, for example, which passenger car is having the most, the highest claim ratio, you'll always be finding data scanty. But artificial intelligence is supporting that. And underwriters can, on a click of a button, can figure out industry-wide claim ratios for a particular make model and can use that for pricing the next risk that they are. And I'm just giving one example, but then such things are possible with the emerging technologies. While conducting training program or designing training modules, we see a lot of empowerment through AI, because that is hyper personalization. You can actually pinpoint what exactly is required by a particular insurance professional. Okay, what kind of learning is to be administered? Like my friend Srijit was mentioning that we don't carpet bombing. We don't do that. We also don't do that because it's a vast subject, and if we start doing it, everyone will be completely confused. So we have to go for hyper personalization, which only AI can provide. Otherwise, it's a humongous task to get into all that. So I think emerging technologies are a boon, but there is a flip side also. And recently I was referring to this book by Mustafa Suleyman, The Coming Wave.
Right.
And I was reminded 20 years back, I was reading another book by Alvin Toffler, Third Wave and Power Shift. So I see it is some kind of a relation to that. He has taken a lot of things, concepts from that. He says that this book is about confronting failures, technological failures, and is trying to tell us that, look, technology is a two-edged sword. So you will get benefits also, but at the same time, you have to be very, very clear about what unintended damages it can create. So I think when we are talking of emerging technologies, we are very optimistic, but there is a pessimism aversion. We don't want to look at the other side. Arey, isse to benefit hoga. Let's not talk about. We are trying to awkwardly sidestep from the main discussion that what other challenges it can bring in. And that is where I think a lot of attention will also have to be given. I think in the previous discussion, somebody pointed out the European Union regulations, why India is still not having very stringent regulations on all that. Deep fake and all these technologies will have both the things, advantages and disadvantages. So mis-selling can also happen with the help of technology not being properly used, and it could be absolutely hazardous. So we will have to contain that thought also, and the fear is real. It's not imaginary. It's real. We have seen that in different geopolitical clashes, even in politics. We see that a lot of technology is being used to deviate, to harm, or to put each other against each other. So there are advantages, and we'll have to contain the disadvantages also.
Right. All the the world which we are getting, a lot of AI technology, and how do we leverage it is very important. as you mentioned, the sentiment part of insurance, right? Sentiment, or it comes the emotion part there. So how do you present the emotions to the stakeholders and get their buy-in for that is more challenging. That I think VR will help on that.
Yeah, in
Want
fact,
to add something?
we pitch the same thing which we pitch to the customer. Risk hai life mein.
Yeah.
So here also you have to sustain the business. There is a risk. So the famous quote by there's a joke also around it. The CFO says that if we train people and leave, they leave, we lose. And the CEO says that if we don't train people and they remain, what happens? So we have to keep on training people. And I think it is fairly understood that in our particular industry, it is an important thing. Learning is definitely an important thing.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you so much. Actually time is up. Any questions that we have to take?